Good morning. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful day. I woke up this morning thinking, what a great day to actually just dive into people and culture, and I'm super excited that you're here with me. So I wanted to start out, and the whole reason this one came up was because I had a call recently with a CEO, and he told me we need to fix our retention problem that we have right now. And that's exactly what we're here to do to help. And so I was like, great, let's talk about it. And so we started having a conversation about what he was concerned about and where the issues were. And after about 20 minutes, it was clear it was not a retention problem at all. This was a leadership problem. And it's so frustrating as a CEO, and being a CEO, I totally get it, but it's so frustrating when you're trying to figure out why you're losing people on a regular basis inside your organization, because it's incredibly expensive. There is so much cost associated with the departure of employees. And so we really need to reset our minds as CEOs. And we have to remember that it's not an HR issue. It's not. It's a direct hit on your bottom line. And if you're not treating it that way, then you're losing more money than you even realize. If this is something that resonates with you, and you're really concerned about retention, especially in our work environments that we have right now, where there are less people coming into the market, and you're noticing that you're losing people to your competitors, drop a 1 in the comments. So if you're a CEO, or if you're responsible for your organization's success and you're willing to step into the messy to fix it, because I'm not going to lie, it's going to be messy, then this message is for you. So before we get started, if we haven't met, I'm Heather Mackay. I'm the founder and CEO of HM Pinnacle Consulting, and we are a leadership and HR organization. And we've been able to help and support organizations of all sizes, from small all the way up through thousands of employees. And what we do is we build HR infrastructures and leadership systems. And these go inside of organizations that'll actually help build your structure, put tools in place, and develop some accountability. And that's actually what makes people's strategy work. So this is part 4 in our culture series, which I was so excited to get to do when I was asked to. So if you haven't had a chance to yet, please go back and listen to the previous 3. The first one was talking about taking inventory of your current culture in 2025 so that you knew what you needed to change or work on for 2026. So the next one was about leaders becoming tolerant of the culture that's there. Because if we are not working diligently to try and change that culture, we absolutely are having to deal with the consequences of that culture. And the third part was retention strategies. So we talked about what it's going to take to retain our employees and why that's so critical with our competitors out there and AI coming into the work environment. And today, I'm excited, but today we're going to talk about one of the areas inside of organizations and companies that we avoid, and that's the CEO. And as a CEO, please know that I hold myself to the same accountabilities that I'm going to hold all of you to, right? There's this misconception that HR can fix it, right? So how many of you, if you're a CEO on this organization's, if you're a CEO or the organization's HR professional, how many of you have heard or said these exact words? I think we need to run a survey. Or you just need to do some more training. Or the one that I have the hardest time with is, please help fix the engagement. Last time I checked, I'm not a genie. My job is HR, right? My job is to help put systems in place. But here's the reality. HR can't fix it. We can build the tools, we can create the structure, and we can help guide you. But HR cannot override poor leadership. We just can't. We're not able to out-policy leadership behavior. I want that to sit with you. We cannot out-policy leadership behavior, right? So if leadership doesn't change, nothing is going to change. No matter how many systems HR puts in place, no matter how many surveys HR does. And that's a whole different topic that we could get on at some point in time about the use of surveys and whether or not it truly has a good impact in your organization. And the reason I say that, and we can discuss that in a different time, but the reason I say that is because if you take and do a survey and yet you do nothing with the results of that survey, you've actually eroded your culture even more than if you had never taken it. So be careful using the I need engagement or let's do a survey. Instead, it's time to start evaluating what those costs really are. And as a CEO, it is your responsibility to know that. So if you're running into an unhealthy 20, 25, 28, 30% turnover, you are bleeding money. Recruiting is expensive nowadays. Training, lost productivity, leadership time, all of those things start to add up, right? And that cost, it adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, depending upon the side of your organization. And if you're comfortable with those costs, if that's just part of doing business, we probably can't help you. I'm going to be honest with you, because we invest in organizations who invest in their people ops, because that's how you're going to change culture. That's how you're going to improve your bottom line. If you're operating at an unhealthy 25+% turnover and you're not addressing it, you really are kind of addressing it. You're choosing that cost, right? That's a leadership decision if you're not trying to adjust or fix it, whether you want to call it that or not. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's a reality. As a CEO, it is our responsibility to make sure that we are investing in stopping turnover. We're investing in retention. We're investing in our employees, right? So let's make this real. I'm working with an organization who 1,500 employees nationwide in multiple locations, and they're a company who feels that they have invested in their employees, right? They have strong pay, they have solid benefits in their organization, and they have good systems, right? And yet they are not keeping people. They're not keeping them. And so that's why they reached out to find out what it is that's causing that. So we kind of dove in and took a closer look at the organization. And what we were finding is while one team was thriving, another was falling apart. And that was a problem. And it wasn't a company problem. The company invested in benefits and pay and systems. It's a leadership problem, right? So the managers that are struggling and have struggling teams, we were finding that they had inconsistent expectations for their employees. Little to no accountability. People were coming and going. Other people were being reprimanded for coming and going. Stories were different between different areas in the organization and their management. And there was little to no communication that those managers were providing. And that was being tolerated. And as we've talked about in previous, the new generation of employees that are coming into the work environment, they are not going to tolerate this. They need to be communicated with. They want to know what the expectations are. Heck, we all want to know what the expectations are for us to do a good job. And that's our job as CEOs, to make sure that we're setting clear expectations and accountability. And we are helping to build that inside of our organization through our leaders. If you have inconsistent employee experiences in your organization, and you should know, and if you don't know, I'm going to pause here and stop you and say, find out. You need to know if the experiences your employees are having are the same no matter what department or area they're in. And it's not random, right? It's a leadership alignment. And that starts with you as the CEO. So as we just learned in this scenario, it doesn't break down at the company level, right? Retention is not always at the company level. It's a culture. It's at the manager level, right? And so we as CEOs need to be careful. We need to think through what it is that we need for retention. And then we need to look at those individuals and those areas that aren't having that and evaluate what they're missing. What are we as CEOs not implementing, supporting, or growing that potentially is causing that. And it starts with things like inconsistent expectations. And I don't know if you've watched the other lives, but I specifically brought this up in one of them. I was working with an engineering firm and we were doing some culture training. And in doing that, one of the questions I asked the leaders was, do you hold your teams accountable? And if not, why? And they talked about the uncomfortableness of doing that and how that potentially might impact their employees negatively and their employees might be unhappy about it. And then I turned around and I asked the employees in the group, I said, raise your hand if you want clear expectations from your manager. If you want those tough conversations sometimes that hold you accountable but give you direction. And every single one of them raised their hand. And I looked at the leaders in the room and I said, so it's only you that's uncomfortable holding them to an expectation because they want it. And this is no different. That's the first reason as a CEO, we need to hold our teams accountable and set expectations so that they in turn do that with their teams. We model the behavior that we want our teams to have. Also avoiding the accountability, right? So as leaders, step into those hard conversations with our leaders. Step into them and help them to find a way to be accountable for the work that they're doing, and then let them learn how to do that with their own teams. It doesn't always have to be awkward or uncomfortable. Accountability conversations are very healthy to have. One of the other things that happens that I see a lot, and it's a big passion and pet peeve of mine, is the idea that we allow excellent employees to become managers and promote them without ever giving them the training that's needed. Over promoting and under training leaders is one of the key areas where organizations fail. And it's a failure on the CEO and a failure on HR. Do not assume that because someone's an excellent individual contributor, that makes them a terrific leader, right? If we aren't giving them the skills to lead, we're not setting the expectations and teaching them what we want in a culture, how are they going to succeed? And even more so, they don't all want to be leaders, right? So you need to make sure that you are setting people up for success. And by over promoting and under training, you're setting them up for failure and you're setting their teams up for failure. So I want to caution you on that one. I can't emphasize enough that if you are the CEO or the HR professional in that organization, develop 2 career paths for all of your employees. A leadership career path and an individual contributor career path. They don't have to be one or the other. You want your employees to be successful in whatever their skills are, or in my organization, we call them their superpowers. And if their superpower is to actually be an individual expert in something, allow them a career path in that, right? Don't automatically over promote and watch it fail because that's not what their expertise or strength is. Be careful of that. Not everyone should be a leader, but if they are, and that's the path you developed, please, please, please make sure that you're developing them in it and don't penalize them for not having the skills to start with, right? A lack of clarity on what good leadership actually looks like falls onto the CEO. So make sure you are developing clear, good leadership practices in your organization, that you're training your leaders so that they're following that same practice that you want. You don't lose employees to companies. You lose them because of poor leadership. You lose them to your competitors who are providing better leadership, who are providing better communication. And we can't afford that, not with the cost of retention. You have to make sure that you are putting an emphasis on development of your managers and your leaders in your organization to help continue to grow your teams. So as a CEO, be careful. Your job is not to manage every employee. It's not. Your job is to ensure that the people managing your employees are capable, equipped, and accountable. That's where your job is. And your job is to lead your culture, to develop and enforce it, and even more so to live it out day to day. Make sure you're looking in that mirror as a leader, that you are aligning with what that culture should be, and your team can see that in you. And if you're not doing that as the CEO, it's not an HR failure. That's a leadership failure. Be careful not to push that onto HR, but to truly own that. That's your role as the CEO of an organization. And here's the reality. We are operating in an environment where there are fewer and fewer people entering the workforce. As we've talked about previously, over half of the people are starting their own entrepreneurial businesses, or they have a desire to in the next few years. Half. Where are we going to find our employees? Where are we going to redevelop them? And don't assume that AI is going to take over every role that your people leave, because that is not going to happen. The hard truth is, as leaders in our organization, we have got to keep our talent pool. It's not going to get bigger. We have got to invest and maintain in that to keep our competitive edge. Otherwise, don't be fooled. Your employees are not only leaving and leaving you with this large gap where you don't have the training, but they're taking that IP with them. And your competitor is going to benefit from that. So be careful. You can't afford to have that happen. So that's exactly what we're passionate about. That's why HMP exists, right? It's to build those people operations engines, because it's not just about training, right? It's about setting clear leadership expectations as CEOs. You need to put in place a leadership infrastructure that is going to give you tools to manage the actual work. Your managers need actual tools, not theories and ideas. They need to know what they have at their fingertips to help them lead day to day while they're working with their employees. They need consistent accountability from you and from each other. And they need alignment across the teams, because like that organization that I'm working with, where we had managers who were succeeding and managers who were failing, it's because they weren't speaking a common leadership language inside the organization. That common leadership language that people ops engines create, that helps them all grow in the right direction, the direction that you are putting in place and the vision that you are doing. That's what's important. So before everything is put in place, you'll notice your teams are incredibly reactive, right? How many times have you heard or said yourself, all I do is have time to put out fires? I've been there for many years, right? That reactive side creates inconsistency. It creates a personality-driven culture where we are not succeeding, right? We don't have the right structure in place. But after you develop that people engine operation structure, the idea of putting in those consistencies, that common leadership language, the tools that your managers need, you will have structure. Your leaders will have clarity, and there will be consistency inside your organization. And that is what employees are looking for. I always like to tell people, think about it like the infrastructure of a building. Whenever I go and talk to leaders about why they need to start developing their people engines, I look at a skyscraper and I say, you want to build your skyscraper so tall. You want your 20 or 30 stories on this building, right? That's how your company's growing and succeeding. But before you get past that first level, you need to go down underground, 20, 30, 40, 50 feet below the surface of that skyscraper is where that infrastructure is built. That is where the foundations are put in place that allow you to build above ground higher and higher and higher. And that is what HR infrastructures and leadership systems do. We build the underground component that allows that skyscraper to continue to flourish. Otherwise, you won't get too many layers above ground before it starts to topple. Without that foundation, nothing holds. So that's how I want you to visualize or think about it, right? So when you build that infrastructure as a CEO inside of your organizations, you create that. You create that consistency, that common language. You create the real investment in people. And that's what drives your people even more. That's what drives them to do their best, to show up and give you everything they've got each day. When you're investing in them and that infrastructure, they invest back into you and that organization. And that is how you thrive. Your best employee didn't leave because they had slightly higher pay somewhere. I can almost guarantee it. And I don't know your best employees, but I will say, if you look back, hopefully you're doing exit interviews. If not, you and your HR team should be talking. But they left because they didn't feel supported. They weren't led with consistency. No one else was held accountable for the work that was being done. And whether you realize that or not, that traces back to leadership. And that leadership, it traces back to you. Like I said before, retention is not an HR initiative. It's a leadership outcome. And if you want to impact your bottom line, that's where you start. So one of the things that we really truly invest in with organizations that we work with is helping them understand how to build strong leaders and the power that you have in that. One of the things I like to point out to leaders when I talk to them is you are more powerful than you realize. You have more ability to determine someone's life than you realize. And you have the ability inside and outside of work to impact that employee. So as a leader, I want you to think about that. When your employees leave at the end of the day, when you leave at the end of the day and you've had a bad day, you don't feel like you've accomplished the work you needed. You feel defeated. You feel like your self-esteem is down. Do you leave that in the parking lot and then head home? No, we take that with us everywhere we go. It impacts our family. It impacts our children. It impacts the community, our friends, because we can't shake off how we feel at the end of a day. But as a leader, if you think that through and you make sure that your investment, even if it's a hard conversation or accountability, is one that allows your employees to feel good, to feel like they've made an impact, to feel like they understand expectations, they're going to leave in a positive, much more engaged way in their life outside of work. We as leaders have that ability. Don't wield that power without thinking it through. Instead, invest in your employees with that. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, wow, yeah, I have that problem in my organization, or I might have that issue, we're noticing a higher retention, I challenge you to quantify that. I challenge you because most leaders underestimate the cost of losing those employees. They underestimate it by hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you're not sure of that, don't take my word for it. We built out on our website a retention calculator to show you exactly what your turnover is costing your business. It's built out specifically to go on the number of employees you have, your retention levels, and an ability to figure out how much you can save by even 2, 3, 4 positive points towards the bottom line. And I'll put it into the chat in a moment, but our website is hmpinnacleconsulting.com. And I challenge you, as a CEO, run those numbers. As an HR professional wanting to help change the culture in your organization, run the numbers, because it'll give you a true bottom line cost of what this is impacting you negatively as. And if you're ready to fix that root cause, if you feel that this is exactly what you need to do, please reach out. We're here to help. In every way, we want you to be successful. We want to make sure that you have the tools that you need, because at the end of the day, when you succeed and you do the work that's necessary, you create a positive environment for your employees. You retain them. They're not leaving you for the competitor. And you have an opportunity to truly impact their lives. That's a heavy weight to carry as a CEO if we're not carrying it correctly. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to invest in this. I want to challenge you to go back and listen to the other 3 LinkedIn Lives on retention so that you can put together a list of tools, ideas, strategies that might help you as you dive into this year farther. Because at the end of the day, our job as CEOs is to build a strong, healthy bottom line. That comes from developing our employees. It comes from understanding where there are issues in our organization and challenges and putting the pieces in place to actually fix those. So I'm going to drop in the chat right now, the website, so that you have an ability to jump on there and to truly look at what your retention cost is. I just want to thank you and hope that you have a terrific and successful day. Reach out if there's anything at all that we can do to support you. We're here. You can DM me at any point in time. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.